بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we're starting the Matan Azhariyyah, a pre-intermediate book in Arabic grammar. What is the point of Arabic grammar? Point of Arabic grammar is it is one of the most useful tools to for the Talib Ilm and for the person who wants to interact with revelation. Meaning, Allah has sent you a message, you want to understand that message. You are telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, Allah, I am willing to listen. So it's one of the most important things. From what I know in Mauritania, when the first thing they start to do after being able to read Arabic and read Quran is grammar and fiqh. So these are the two most important sciences, right? They're like the two most important sciences. So my brother, he's a doctor, and when he was in the what we call in England called sixth form, the last 2 years before university, he had to take certain subjects. And in England, you choose very few subjects. So in order to do medicine, you don't actually have to do biology. You have to do physics. The main thing is you have to do chemistry. Chemistry is extremely important. So if you think about it, physics is ultimately more important in understanding the reality or the apparent reality of how things work, but yet it's not essential in order to become a doctor. Biology seems really, really important, right? But it is not essential. So it is very important that we focus on the most important things, right? The most important things. So, it's fiqh and nahu, these are extremely useful things. You don't need that much sarf. You don't need that much balagha, right? I'm going to sound very strange here when I say that. Yes, you need balagha, but you don't need that much, right? So if you look at the late curricula, they always have balagha, and balagha is a key theme, but it's not super essential. It's not as essential as nahwu, that's for sure, right? Did Imam Nawawi study balagha? I don't think so. Did Al-Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi study balagha? I don't think so. So I don't think it was balagha was I teach balagha, it's very important to me. But it's not as core as nahu, right? You could say, did Imam Shafi'i or Imam Ahmad, did they study nahu? No, because it wasn't on the curricula yet. It was something that you learn kind of in a different way. So that's true. But when you say what is like the most important thing, Nahu is one of the most important things. Really, really important, right? So many things in usul fiqh, so many things in understanding Arabic properly, understanding balagha. You can't do balagha without Nahu, right? Abdul Qahir al-Jurjani, when he wrote his great books, the Ijaz al-Quran and Dalail was it Dalail al-Ijaz, what's it called? Dalail al-Ijaz and escapes me his other one now. Two really important books that kind of shaped and formed the whole of Balagha that came after him. What did he do first? He wrote a huge book on Nahu. So Nahu is really, really important. And it's something that we use a lot, right? The Hadarima, arguably like the two sciences that they do itqan of is Nahu and Fiqh. That's what they do very well. They do other things, but they do very well. They do Nahu and Fiqh. It's very, very important, right? And so, so it's very important. However, it's not a goal, just like fiqh is not a goal. Rather, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a goal, Allah being pleased with us. But this is a tool in order to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very important tool. And inshallah, and focusing on it, making sure that you get it, etc., is important. So the author, may Allah shown tremendous mercy, he says, and it was also one of the first sciences ever that reached maturity, right? One of the first sciences to ever reach maturity, right? it matured ultimately at the same time as kind of other sciences, like, 6th, 7th, 8th centuries, as we find this maturity, um, along with other sciences. But it was already very, very mature, way back in the day, right? Way back in the day, right? We're talking about time of like when Sibawayh comes onto the scene, it's already very mature. He is not writing a book by himself. He's writing based on at least one or two, generations of huge thinkers in Arabic language and morphology and grammar and phonology that have come before him. So it's one of these things that are very, very early because it's so important, right? The gap between us and revelation is Arabic. We need language. It's very important. So he says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الكلام في اصطلاح النحويين عبارة عما اشتمل على ثلاثة أشياء غير منصرف. Right, so it says kalam is a term, kalam. What does it mean in the istilah as a terminology? It means something that has three things. وهي اللفظ والإفادة والقصد. Okay, it's an utterance, meaning you said something, you didn't just think something, right? So in Nahu, we are not talking about what is written, right? We are not talking about what is written. We are talking about what is said. So if you say الذين آمنوا has an alif, a hamza, an alif at the end, that's not part of the Nahu at all. We're not going to analyze it because it's not said, right? Or the word ana, mabni ala sukun. No, it's not mabni ala sukun. Okay? Please stop me if I'm using terms or concepts that you're not familiar with, right? So the word ana, even though it's written hamza, noon, alif, right? It is not mabni ala sukun, it's mabni ala fath because you say ana. You don't say ana. Okay? So we're looking at what is said. What are the sounds that Arabs made? Well, ifada, right? And that it's useful. Ifada, it's useful, meaning it conveys a complete meaning, right? It conveys a complete meaning, right? Well, qasd, and it was done intentionally, right? So when you say, for example, somebody who was asleep, an animal, right? A parrot that you train to speak, right? That's not considered kalam, right? That's not what we're interested in. That's not a very significant point there, right? So it says, فاللفظ اسم لصوت ذي مقاطع, right? مقطع today means syllable, right? That's what it means today, right? When we say مقطع صوتي, it means a syllable. It doesn't mean that, right? It doesn't mean a sound that has syllables. It means it has letters in it, etc. أو ما هو في قوة ذلك. Um, so he says, or something that's effectively like that. So what does that mean? It means a word that you can imagine I'm saying, right? So if somebody says, oh my, right? That means, oh my God, right? So, oh my means, oh my God. So the word God is implied. Or if I say, what time is it? And you say, it's 24 past, 24 minutes past the hour, right? So past the hour, that's implied. So, what is it? المقدر بقوة الملفوظ. Something that you could imagine is there. The sentence, it's already implied. That's effectively there. That can have amal. It can do things often, right? Not all the time, but often. Okay. No worries, Ibrahim. So it says, والصوت عرض يخرج مع النفس مستطيلا متصلا بمقطع من مقاطع الحلق واللسان والشفتين. Right? So going into more details, what does it mean? Salt is an accident, عرض. Right? For those of you who are doing mantiq, or those of you who are doing kalam, al-arad, right? Arad with a fatha on the ra, arad means something that occurs to something, right? Here is my phone. My phone was moving. So the motion is an arad, is an accident of the phone. The phone got hot, The heat is an accident of the phone. The phone is black. The phone is blue. The phone is expensive. The phone was cheap. These are things يعرض على الهاتف, right? They come over the thing, something that occurs, right? So this says here, this is an arad, right? It is an accident, right? So in reality, it's an accident. The voice is an accident of air particles, right? So the vibrating of the air particles, there are the air particles, that is the essence, and the accident that happens to them is that they're vibrating at a certain frequency, right? يخرج مع النفس, it comes out with, when you make a sound with it, when you breathe, مستطيلا متصلا, right? And it's connected, it's not cut up. بمقطع من مقاطع الحلق واللسان والشفتين, with a part of the throat, or a part of the tongue, or the part of the lips, right? That's what we mean. So we're not talking about what you write, etc. والإفادة إفهام معنى يحسن السكوت عليه من المتكلم أو من السامع أو منهما على الخلاف في ذلك. So he says, when you say al-ifada, right, it's useful. What do you mean by that? We mean you convey a meaning, okay? Well, clock, that's a meaning. Happiness, that's a meaning. عمدة الأحكام من كلام خير الأنام للإمام الحافظ عبد الغني عبد الواحد المقدسي المتوفي كذا وكذا وكذا. That's right? That's a very complex meaning. But so عمدة الأحكام من كلام خير الأنام للحافظ للإمام الحافظ المتوفي what are you telling me about him? All I just said is here's a book's name, and here's the end of the book, and it's written by so and so, written by so and so. But I didn't say this book is written by so and so. I just made a long adjective. So when I say something that you couldn't put a period in the end of, you couldn't put a stop at the end of, that's not kalam, right? معنى يحسن السكوت عليه من المتكلم. It makes sense. You can actually stop at it because you're actually making a predication. You're making a predication. You're saying something about something else, or at least inquiring something about something else. And he says, يحسن السكوت عليه من المتكلم أو من السامع. Right? It's good to stop at for the person listening or the person speaking. على خلافي. We're not going to go into that. Right? So the point is, it's an actual sentence. So when we have something, a meaning that is what called, so what is the opposite of kalam then? The opposite of kalam then, well, is either no meaning, right? Or a meaning that is mufrad, right? A meaning that is mufrad, right? So when we say kalam or jumla, the opposite of kalam or jumla is mufrad, right? Like when you say independence, when you say celebrating birthdays, when you say you're not answering the phone after I called you 5 times. So your meaning your act of not answering the phone after I called you 5 times, that's called a mufrad, because it's a single unit. It's not a sentence, as opposed to your act of not answering the phone after I called you 5 times is really annoying. Okay? So now it's become kalam. Okay? So it says, okay, and then it says والقصد أن يقصد المتكلم إفادة السامع مثل اجتماع هذه ومثال اجتماع هذه الثلاثة العلم نافع. Okay, I just said العلم نافع. Okay, what is it? لأنه صوت مشتمل على بعض حروف الحلق واللسان والشفتين، وهي بعض الحروف الهجائية, some of the letters of the alphabet. ومفيد لأنه أفهم معنى يحسن السكوت عليه. Right? What is the meaning? I've ثبوت النفع للعلم. Right? That's what I've done. I've إثبات النفع للعلم. That's useful. ومقصود لأن متكلم قصد به إفادة السامع. Okay? Make sense? So it's not a word, right? When we say mufrad, we mean a single unit, a part of something, as opposed to a sentence. Right? Everyone's following?
Yes, sure.
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Okay. There's more discussions here, and I want to go into them because it's not super practical. It says وأجزاء الكلام التي يتركب منها ثلاث أجزاء. Right. So now, just like we do in chemistry and in physics, we try and analyze things. So in chemistry, what is everything made out of?
Particles.
Say it again, sorry.
Atoms?
Atoms. Okay. What kind of atoms? Can you give me a type of atom?
Yeah, I forgot.
Is blood an atom?
Everything material has atoms.
Ions?
Okay. Iron. Thank you very much. Iron. Okay. And another atom or another element. Iron. Okay, what about when you're breathing in? 18% of what you breathe in is
Made
what?
of elements.
Yeah, so when you breathe in, what's that very important thing that you breathe in?
Oxygen.
Oxygen, okay? So what I do when I'm trying to explain the natural world around me from a chemical point of view is to say, listen, hombre, right? Bro, listen, every single thing around you, it looks a bit complex. It's actually very simple. It's made out of what, 113 elements or whatever it is, 100 something elements, right? That is everything that you'll ever see. Every single thing around you, it looks complex, but actually it's pretty simple. Okay. And then I try and talk about how these things interact. And that's what we do. That's what we do in chemistry, right? Chemistry, we break down the natural world around us into the most basic parts, and we say, how do they interact, right? That's what we do in chemistry. 118, Jazakumullah khair. So guys, rule number one, I'm always right. So if I say there's 113 attributes, there's 113 attributes. You're not allowed to correct me. I'm joking. 118 elements. My apologies. Okay, so now the grammarians are doing the same thing. They're looking at the chemistry. They're looking at the chemistry of words. Okay, they're not looking at the meaning of words. That's the science of the mu'jam, right? That's science of looking at words in a dictionary. Nor they're looking at the word itself and how is it formed, the morphology of the word. That's sarf, right? But we're looking at here these words, how do they interact? So before I start talking about how they interact, which is grammar, I need to put them into categories, which is actually not that easy. Right? It's not that easy. So the grammarians, they looked at words and they said, let's try and put them into different categories. Okay, let's try and put them into different categories. And most grammarians would say basically everything fits into three categories. Okay, everything fits into three categories. You're either going to be looking at ism or a fi'l or a harf. Okay? Now, in reality, there are certain words that are a bit of a pain in the neck and they're a bit strange. Okay? So, for example, if I say things like هات الكتاب. So, هات الكتاب, هاتي, right? هاتي, ha, alif, ta with a kasra, hati. Or if I say عليك بكذا, right? See well to this, عليك بالفقه الحنبلي. Right? How many Hanbalis do we have here?
I think at least two. Or let me see. Three, I see.
Inshallah, soon everyone.
Everybody.
Yeah, three Hanbalis I see here. MashaAllah.
Inshallah. Okay. Okay, so I say عليك بكذا. عليك بكذا is not harf, it's not jar majrur. عليك is what we call ism fi'l. So there's lots of really weird words like عليك بكذا, عليك, like دونك هذا الكتاب, like hat, like heyhata, heyhata, right? These are really weird words, right? That are kind of verbs, but kind of not verbs, right? And they behave in very strange ways. So it's generally a problem how we analyze them. So they are technically, according to most grammarians, a category of ism because they don't really work like a fi'al or a harf. But it's kind of odd. Similarly, there are certain af'al that kind of act like nouns, right? Like laysa, right? Laysa or asa. Asa and laysa, they don't have any present tense. You couldn't make an ism fa'al out of them. They're kind of strange. They kind of act like a harf, right? There's not much difference between laysa and like ma. So it's kind of pretty similar. It's kind of a bit like a harf. It's kind of confusing, right? So there's a lot of things that are very borderline, right? A lot of things that are very borderline. Some pronouns are not actually pronouns, right? So when you say, for example, أرأيتك لو فعلت كذا وكذا, أرأيتك, have you considered, أرأيتك. So أرأيت, that's easy, right? That's a harf. رأي, that's a verb. Ta, that's an ism, right? That's a dhamir. No, that's pretty easy. But أرأيتك, right? The kaf is like doing what? Like, have you in north of England they say that have you heard yourself? Right? Have you heard yourself? Like, have you listened to yourself? So أرأيتك, is that a you or is it something else? Right? Many scholars, if not most, say it's actually a harf. It's like ذلك, like a harf. The kaf in ذلك. What else? When you say زيدا هو العالم, زيد هو العالم, that's called ضمير that's called what is it called? ضمير فصل, right? ضمير فصل. It comes between a definite subject and a definite predicate, usually. They say it has no mahal. It has no grammatical role. So part and parcel of something that is unique to nouns is nouns always have a grammatical role. They're either going to be the mubtada, they're going to be the khabar, they're going to be this, that. They always have a place. It's like asking something. Here is, if I ask, for example, here is the nucleus, right? Here's my neutron and proton. Where is it? It's either in this room or that room. It always has a place. Like every single element, every single nucleus has a place where it is, right? Electron's a bit of a funny thing, right? But so the same thing, a noun always has a particular grammatical role and therefore has a particular grammatical state. Rafa', nasb, jar, one of the three, always. So when I say Zaydun huwa al-alimu, huwa is what? Like, it's a bit strange. So it has no mahal. If it has no mahal, then it's a harf, right? It's actually a harf. So there's lots of things that are kind of weird. The ism fa'il basically is a verb, even though it's an ism, right? Ana dhahib, I'm going, right? Innahu atihim, innahu sayatihim, same. Atihim, sayatihim, same thing, right? وكلبهم باسط ذراعيه وكلبهم يبسط ذراعيه, same thing, no difference. So an ism fa'il is basically, right? ذلك يوم مجموع له الناس. ذلك يوم مجموع له الناس. Nas is the نائب الفاعل of مجموع. Okay, so therefore it's basically the same as saying ذلك يوم يجمع له الناس. Same thing. So ism fa'il, ism maf'ul, basically a verb. Basically a verb. You can say al yajlis and al jalis. You can say both. You can actually say al yajlis. So therefore, al yajlis and al jalis means the same thing. Means the one who is sitting. Same thing. So there's a lot of things that's borderline, right? A harf that's basically a noun. A noun that's basically a harf. a verb that's basically a harf, a verb that's basically a noun. There's a lot of things that are really in between, right? They're really in between. Where do we put them? Right. So if you want to be annoying, you can make lots of categories. If you want to be more succinct, make 3 categories, and that is what we find in the late school of the in the grammarians, that yes, there's 3 categories: ismun wa fi'lun wa harf, right? And then he's going to go through the signs, okay? But it doesn't actually define what they are yet. It does not define them, does it? Does anybody know the definition of these words?
Yeah.
Bismillah, go ahead, Muhammad.
الاسم ما دل على معنى في نفسه غير مقترن بأحد الأزمنة الثلاث
So
والفعل ما دل
good. So غير مقترن بزمن من الأزمنة, right? So there's no time
Yeah.
involved. Okay, there's no time involved. That's number 1. And number 2, يدل على معنى بنفسه أو right, بنفسه. So what does that mean? We understand that when we look at a harf. So we're going to know that the ism يدل على معنى بنفسه. الفعل يدل على معنى بنفسه. الحرف لا يدل على معنى بنفسه. Right? So it doesn't mean it doesn't have a meaning. Okay? But let's look at a harf. In order to understand what an ism is, let's look at a harf. And in order to understand a verb an ism is, let's look at a fi'l. Okay? So a harf, when I say things like أنت زيد, okay? أنت زيد, أنت زيد. So I say ما معنى أ. Just give me one word in English for أ. How do I say that in English? أنت زيد.
Is
Is?
Zaid or are you?
Okay. So, but okay, where's the word? So R
Okay.
R is the word a.
No.
You is
It's
the word.
just
It's
this
all like this in the context of
Okay.
sentence.
So what about my intonation? So and the word order. So can I say in English, when I say, "Are you Zaid?" My intonation and the word order, what do they convey?
A question.
question.
Question. Thank you very much. Okay. So means question. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But notice in English, I did it one way, and there's no actual word that indicates there's a question. Okay? In Arabic, I use a harf. Okay? But the concept, what is actually conveying, the ma'na, has come out through the whole thing. What I've done is I've put these things together. In English, I change the word order, and then I change the word order and I give intonation, and suddenly you understand that I am asking a question whether or not you are Zaid. Okay? But the phrase I am asking a question, or the word question, is not there. So يدل على معنى المعنى موجود, right? يدل على معنى لا شك فيه, يدل على معنى ولكن بغيره, right? So intonation itself, huh? That doesn't mean anything, does it? Like, what is the question you're asking? It doesn't mean anything, right? So it has no significance in itself. It cannot convey something. To the power of 2, that's not a number. 10 to the power of 2 is a number, but to the power of 2 does not have does not a number in itself. You can't put a number there. So this harf, okay, the harf دل على معناه بغيره. Okay, it's super important. It has a very important meaning. But دل على معناه بغيره. Okay, so if I look at 2 words, a and al-istifham. So a means al-istifham. But the word does not indicate al-istifham in itself. You have to put it with a sentence, and then the istifham comes out, right? And for those of you, again, who are doing logic and doing balagha, it's a ma'nan juz'i. It's not a ma'nan kulli, okay? Whereas al-istifham, ma'nan kulli. right? It's a universal. Asking questions, al-istifham, or, wondering about something, right? Al-istifsar, jamil, right? Al-istifsar, jamil, right? Asking questions. طرح الأسئلة, right? Asking questions is a general concept. So number one, the ma'na of a harf al-juz'i, whereas the ma'na of the ism is kulli, right? Unless it could be juz'i as well. But put that aside, how did the word istifham or su'al, how did it indicate its meaning? The word su'al in my mind is there and it means asking a question. It indicates its meaning by itself. Whereas does not indicate its meaning by itself. It's not that it doesn't mean anything by itself, but it doesn't indicate its meaning by itself. It needs other things there. Does that make sense? It's like rope, right? It's like a rope between two things. Does that make sense? La. So if I get the word la and I get the word an-nafi. So la indicates an-nafi, right? And an-nafi indicates an-nafi. They both indicate negation. But they don't indicate it in the same way. La adri. What did it do? It said, here is a person called Farid, and here's something called Farid's understanding or knowing, and I am negating the relationship between this knowing and Farid. That's what you're doing. But by itself, it means it cannot indicate a meaning by itself. And even in the sentence, the meaning of negation comes out with the other things, as opposed to the word an-nafyu ضد al-ithbat. Right? Negation is the opposite of affirmation, right? Those words indicate their meanings by themselves, whereas the harf doesn't. Does that make sense? So the ism, we know what that is. يدل على معنى بنفسه. الفعل يدل على معنى بنفسه، ولكن الحرف لا يدل على معنى بنفسه. Make sense?
Yes, Sheikh.
It's clear with everybody? Hussein, Husseini, Ibrahim,
Yes,
Aban,
Sheikh.
Shabim, Muhammad Aslam. I know
Yeah,
some
Sheikh.
of you are,
Yes.
mashallah, mutamakkinin. Some of you are like Muhammad, is that Muhammad Amin, right? Muhammad Amin, do you use the use the phrase yadob? Yadob? Does that make any sense to you in like just about?
Yeah.
You use it?
Well, I used to be in Saudi, so
Oh, you used
I
to
know
be in
as well.
Saudi. Okay, so
Yeah,
you're
here
kind
we
of
don't use it.
you're a cocktail, mashallah. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, yadob. Okay, but Maghribi, it's totally different meaning, right? Okay, anyway, so please stop me. Okay, so now al-ism. So what now? So we know what the difference between an ism and the fi'l is, and we know the difference between harf. Okay? So now what's the difference between an ism and fi'l? الاسم يدل على معنى نفسه ولا يقترن بزمن من الأزمنة، بينما الفعل مقيد، right? محدود المعنى, right? It's actually limited. So you can say it's muqtarin, yeah, it's tied to, but it's actually limited. So this is important in balagha. In balagha, we see this all the time, the use of a noun versus a verb and a verb versus a noun. What are we trying to do? We're trying to tie something to a specific time or not tie it to a specific time. Okay? So unlike in English or perhaps in German, right? I don't know how in German how you define a verb, but we usually think of a verb as an action word. It's not necessarily an action word, right? Hasuna Zaydun is not an action, right? That just means تقيد حسن زيد بالماضي. That's what it means, right? حصل حسنه في الماضي وتقيد به. That's what it means. It means Zayd's goodness or handsomeness happened and it was limited to the past. That's what it means. As opposed to Zaydun Hasanun, right? That is now mutlaq. It's now he is nice, he is handsome, he is good. Okay? So that's the use of balagha, right? But in terms of a noun, the noun is not tied to a time, limited to a time. It's mutlaq, it's unleashed. It's it's just in absolute sense, whereas a verb is tied to time. And then again, here's a problem. Laysa, is laysa tied to a time? Not really.
No, not really. It's
Kind of
just a
strange, right?
negation.
So we have a problem, right? We have a problem when we try and put these words into these different categories. But khalas, that's the general picture. Okay? Makes sense, inshallah? Everyone's happy?
Yes.
So then it says fa'alama. So key point. In Ajurumiyya and the Alfiyya, we're going to talk about the alamat al-ism, alamat etc. Right? There's two types of alama. There's an alama of behavior, an alama of what you actually see on the word. Okay? So behavior is, what kind of thing does this thing do? Right? What kind of thing does this thing do? Right? So for example, Ibn Malik mentions what is it? تمييز حصل. How's it go? Remember the line now. بتمييز حصل. والنداء something, forget it now. But anyway, he mentions different signs of the ism. So he says when nida, he says the fact that you could call upon it. He says well it's not, I can't remember now. He mentions it. He mentions, for example, that you could call upon a noun, or you could do isnad to a noun, right? So you could say Zaid is my friend. So if I can put the word is after a word, that makes it a noun, as opposed to on is yes. That doesn't make any sense. On is yes, right? On is yes. That doesn't make any sense, right? Because on is a preposition. It's a particle. It can't be a subject, right? So that's an outward sign in terms of how it behaves, its behavior. Okay, so the ability to become mudaf, the ability to become mudaf ilay, the ability to become munada, the ability to do isnad to it. These are signs, right, of a noun. Whereas then the signs in terms of what's on it is something else. Okay? جزاكم خير. بالجر والتنين والنداء وال ومسند للاسم حتى ميز حصل. جزاكم خير. Okay. So when they do, they don't break it down. They won't say, oh, by the way, this is this kind of sign. They don't do that, but just put it in your head. There are two types of sign: a sign that pertains to the actual word, I can see it on it, and a sign that does behavior. And so when they are labeling it and trying to categorize it, sometimes they're going to go with A, and sometimes they're going to go with B. Right? ليس لا يدل على معنى. Right? So لا غير مقترن بالزمان. Right? ليس, but you say ليست, right? ليسوا, right? Yeah, outwardly behaves like a noun, so like a verb. We'll call it a verb for now, right? Even though it's kind of a bit of a fishy verb. Okay, so he says والاسم فعلامة الاسم الخفض, right? Meaning that it can have a half jar. نحو بزيد والتنوين. Okay. Okay, let's just quick side point. 3 types of tanween. Is anybody familiar with them?
Yes.
Bismillah, go ahead, Ibrahim.
Yes.
عوض
Mm-hmm.
متمكن أمكن غير أمكن. Then there was for example صهن, but that's عوض, right?
That's not awad now.
متمكن أمكن تنكير مقابلة عوض.
Okay, good. So then for awad, so awad means to replace something. So you got 3 types of awad.
حينئذ, for
حين
example.
إذن is what? Awad an. What's so when you say حين إذن or وقت إذن?
It replaces several sentences.
It replaces a sentence. So we could have a tanween that comes at the end of a word, like practically speaking, the word إذ. Okay, يومئذ جاء زيد يومئذ. Right. So the tanween replaces the sentence. Okay. Fine. We could have a tanween that replaces what else? Could replace a mufrad like بعضهم من بعض, right? كل آمن بالله أي كلهم آمن بالله بعضهم من بعضهم, right? That's called التنوين العوض عن الكلمة, right? So جملة كلمة, and then we've got تنوين العوض عن الحرف, like what? Like غواشٍ. Okay, غواشٍ. So we have the word غاشية, غاشية, right, on the pattern فاعلة. The plural of فاعلة is فواعل, which is غير منصرف. So you should say غواشي, but we don't say غواشي, we say غواشٍ. So we drop the yeah that's supposed to be there, and we throw in a tanween instead. So that's tanween العوض عن الحرف. Okay, go ahead, Ibrahim.
No, that was my question. If ism manqus also falls under this categorization.
So اسم منقوص is not.
Category.
So when you say رام, أنا رام, وأنت ماش, وهو قاض, that is not what we mean. Yeah. So when we say, for example, here you say, oh, you dropped the yeah and put a no. No, that's not, because you didn't replace. It's not really ta'wiled, right? So that's different. That's just the yeah is dropped in mashin. The yeah in qadin and muftin is yeah is dropped for intiqa sakin and something else. Here, when you say rawashin, jawarin, there is no logical reason why we don't say jawari. Hunna jawari. Hunna rawashin. Here rawashin. Right? There's no reason why we shouldn't do that, but we just do. We drop the yeah that should be rawashi with a sukoon on it, and instead of it we put a noon we put a noon in the space, it becomes a rawashi. So that's genuinely tanween al-iwad. Okay. Then we got the tanween of muqabala, right, in like in Muslimat, and then you got the tanween of tamkeen, like in what's it called, like Zaydun, to show there's not a ghayr munsarif. And another tanween, I forget what it's called now. In tanween, when you make a word indefinite. So there's a name like Sibawayhi or Rahawayhi, and then you make it indefinite. I'm not saying Rahawayhi himself, I'm saying a Rahawayhi. So say Rahawayhin. Anybody remember what it's called? Tanween and Tankir.
Tankir.
Right? So you basically, so Tankir here meaning, it's not meaning it's indefinite. It means it's no longer being ma'rifah, right? So there's a difference between a word being nakira and it's no longer, like it's just like my resignation as opposed to I'm unemployed, right? So it's like the tanween of resignation. I've resigned from being a proper noun. I am just one of the many rahawayhis and not rahawayhi himself, right? Okay. Just side point for Hanbali. So Ibrahim and so Ishaq ibn Rahaway, obviously very important in the Hanbali school, and he was born on the way to Mecca. So Ra means road, Wayhi means smell, right? Smell of the road. He was born on the way to Mecca. Right? Okay, we have to stop, inshallah, for the next class. This is what tanweenu. Wal alif wal lamu, you say al. Yes, you could have al before a sentence like al yajlis, meaning alladhi yajlis. It does happen, but that's rare. So most of the time, if you see an al, yeah, you probably got a noun. وحروف الخفض, the حروف الجر, نحو من الله. And then he goes on to علامة الفعل. Okay, inshallah, any questions or queries?
No, Sheikh.
Inshallah, my apologies for being late. Inshallah, next week we'll start on time, inshallah. And we'll go on from here, inshallah ta'ala. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Sheikh, I would have to leave now. I can't participate in the usul class,
No
unfortunately.
worries. Inshallah, we will forgive you before Laylatul Qadr, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
That's British humor.
Assalamu alaikum.
I think. Assalamu alaikum.